When the final chapter of the story of the 2024 Bills is written, Luka, what will we be saying about the 2024 Bills wide receiver group?
Ooh, about the wide. I was thinking it was going to be a broad team question. I will say putting that little wide receiver group in there was fun. I will believe that what we're going to be saying about this receiver group overall is how it will still feel like that true one will be nice, but I do believe that overall the story of this receiver group is how productive they will be as a whole unit or a whole position group in general. And I think it's going to come in a very unorthodox fashion. And I think it's not going to be pretty to the eye half the time, we'll call it. But overall, when you sit there and you look at the numbers and say you look at Josh Allen's passing numbers and go, holy heck, how did Josh Allen get to that number? Who was the breakout star of this? I don't know if you're necessarily going to have that singular name. Like for the years, it's been, of course, Diggs was the direct proponent of Josh Allen's success, or vice versa, right? Josh Allen was a proponent of Diggs' success. They were a 1-for-1 where you were getting, 1,200 plus yards and a multitude of touchdowns, leading the league in catches for Diggs, so on and so forth, that it was like, okay, this is a straight linear line of where the success came from. I don't believe that's going to exist with this wide receiver group. I don't think there's going to be one true standout among the rest. I think as a collective unit, you will be able to appreciate what they've been come season's end as a whole rather than individual parts.
I get that. And I think there's an argument to be made for that. To borrow a phrase from Minnesota Vikings legend and Arizona Cardinals somewhat legend, he made the comment when he was the Cardinals coach, Dennis Green, they are who we thought they were. That is what I think we'll be saying about the Bills wide receivers. I'm going to start off negative tonight. I don't think we will look back on this wide receiver group fondly. I do think Josh Allen will still get his numbers in a sense that he will throw for over 4,000 yards. But my prediction, and I know that we've kind of gone through different phases with this group. There was a point in time where collectively it seemed like Bills fans were very excited about what Curtis Samuel could bring. Luka and I have never been like overly hot on Curtis Samuel. Keep in mind, we think is a useful player. There's ways to use him that he can benefit your offense. I'm not sure he's the guy you want to funnel the majority of your targets through. He's never been that guy in his career. And I don't think really there's reason to believe he's going to be that guy. And then the draft happened, and it was Keon Coleman. And, Keon Coleman has a fun skill set. He has a go up and get it kind of ability to get the ball. But again, I think he's somebody that's going to take a while to get his feet wet in the NFL. I'm not sure he's somebody you're going to just want to hit the ground running and funnel 100 targets to. Khalil Shakir is a guy that I think, for the most part, everybody's confident in. And there's a segment of fans out there that looks at what he did after Joe Brady took over midseason, and his numbers, when you extrapolate them out, were actually better than Diggs. I'm not ready to just say that, okay, Khalil Shakir is a number one in waiting. I respect Bruce Nolan completely. I respect everything he thinks about football, and I respect his eye for the talent. He made a great comment about Khalil Shakir. However fast you think he is, he's one notch faster, something to that effect. And I get all that. And I agree with that. But I think there's a huge gap, and this is not what Bruce was saying, so this isn't an attack on him. There's a huge gap between being better than you think he is and a number one in the league. And I think at the end of the year, we will look at this Bills group, and if 100 targets go to Khalil Shakir or 100 targets go to Curtis Samuel, we'll be left thinking, that was cool. Imagine if they would have gone to someone like Jamar Chase, someone like Stephon Diggs in his prime. And there's two examples teams or people like to point to for where the Bills could get their success from. One is the Green Bay Packers. They don't really have a true number one. They've drafted a lot of mid-round picks. They have Reed, they have Wicks, they have Christian Watson. I know I'm missing somebody else, but it's like any given day, somebody can have their day. And I look at that and I think, yeah, that's a good core. That's a great argument. I don't know why I keep going to Jamar Chase. Put Jamar Chase on top of that group, and and everybody eats, and that group is that much scarier. I think this idea that it's somehow easier to know where the ball's going when you have a number one, that just reminds me of like something you say when you don't have a number one. Like somehow it's easier to defend a team with a number one because you know where the ball's going. The other thing I'll say, Luka, and we're not going to spend this long on all the questions, but I do think this is like the question for the Bills. There's this idea that the Chiefs were the blueprint for getting rid of your number one and not having a great wide receiver core name value wise, and maybe even like the Bills plan to do, having the tight end be your best receiver. And I will just tell you that I would not look at the 2023 Chiefs as an offensive success story. If you want to model yourself after the 2023 Chiefs, you better bring 3 all-pros on defense like they had with L'Jarius Sneed, Trent McDuffie, and Chris Jones, and the best defensive play caller, in my opinion, on their side of the ball. The other thing I will tell you is they went out this offseason after having 6 games last year where they scored less than 20 points. They went 4-4 at home, or I guess they would have had 5 home games. So 5-4 at home. They lost 4 home games. They went out this offseason and they spent free agent money on Hollywood Brown. They traded up, remember that, for a wide receiver in the draft. So they told you they weren't happy with where their receivers were. So, and this is a team that's been aggressive trying to fill the receiver position, spending a 2nd-round pick on Sky Moore, spending a 3rd-round pick in a trade on Kadarius Toney, going out and signing Juju Smith-Schuster. They've been trying to fix the situation. The defense is great. Patrick Mahomes is an all-time great. Travis Kelce is an all-time great. Andy Reid is an all-time great. Steve Spagnuolo is an all-time great. And they're able to overcome regardless, but it's not a path that you just want to assume you can follow. And that's where my issue is with the Bills right now is you have Josh Allen at his age 27 season when, unless you're one of the 11 players who stupidly voted him as overrated, have a quarterback that everybody believes is one of the 2 or 3 best quarterbacks in the entire sport, and you're shortchanging him at wide receiver this year. And to me, that's disappointing. And I do think ultimately could be the reason why the Bills don't make it to the top of the mountain this year.
I just to wrap it up too, I even said I do believe that even looking back, it's going to be, man, it would be nice having that number one. It feels like we're still going to be okay because we do have 17 and that's where I truly live. And I think it's not like it's a bunch of bums in our wide receiver room. Of course, I do think, for instance, that this receiver room has greater potential going into the season than the Chiefs one did last year for them. I will even start there, which is funny to say because one of the individuals we're going to lean on is one of the individuals was leaned on by the Chiefs. But overall, it's going to feel like the past couple of years, Josh, where I remember us talking about how if we lost Diggs and everyone else had to slide up one slot where they would be, this would have been what we had, would have been, a bottom 8 receiver room in the league. And because of Diggs, at least everyone else slid into their spot, and then when Gabe Davis made that leap up to the 2nd receiver spot, it was like Gabe Davis is okay right now. It's disappointing though, because what built the promise of Gabe Davis was what we saw when he was kind of that big slot 3rd, 4th receiver role. And he was able to explode with those opportunities. And it felt like if we had a true number 2, because Diggs was the 1 at the time, that would slide Gabe Davis down to the more appropriate role. And that's what it feels like you have again still with this group. Not that they're not going to be productive overall, and it will be okay in my eyes, at least. It sounds like a little bit pessimism out of yours, but I'm not saying I'm optimistic over here. It's just I'm pretty neutral where I believe that because 17's throwing them the ball, it'll be okay. It's one of those things where it's okay, but imagine if you had that alpha and then from there, Khalil Shakir was just your true slot dependent. When you need him, you'll have him in those opportunity spots. Mac Hollins isn't being looked at as that big X out there when needed it for blocking situations in downfield. Keon Coleman, I'm not saying they're going to lean on him because I don't believe that will be the case. He's going to be one in the rotation kind of deal. But overall, I do think some eyes are going to be on him to maybe see some production, or at least we'll call them flashes, right? Or, maybe it's a splash game here or there. People are going to want to see that. If you still had Diggs in his prime, we'll call it, or, any other kind of true number 1, I don't believe that kind of microscope would be there for a Keon Coleman. And I'm not going to say that Keon Coleman feels like the kind of guy that could be a problem for, because I don't believe that to be the case. I think he's pretty good at living in his own world, which is great.
Mhm.
But it's something that it would be really nice to be there, because as you also put it, and I think it's perfectly said, we are now in the prime time of Josh Allen with almost a timer that has been started. He's in his 27-year-old year. It's like he's not getting any younger, not saying that he's old already, but you don't want to feel like one of these years was wasted because you needed to reshuffle stuff and you did a little bit too extreme. And I don't think that'll feel like that at the end of the season, but you are you're playing with a little bit of fire on this one when it comes to this year. And I really hope that correction comes similar, like we saw with the Chiefs this past draft and this past offseason. You'll see that with the Bills then come next offseason.
And I will say this, Luka and I are fully aware of why the Bills did what they did this offseason. And I, for one, applaud them for it. I think that the writing was on the wall that it was time to stop kicking the can down the road with restructures on guys like Poyer, Hyde, Tre'Davious White, Mitch Morse. I think that group had their chance. And I think this is a take your medicine year, which is healthy. And it gives the Bills a chance to reset next year. I absolutely would choose that path over bringing everybody back, running it back, and then having to do your take your medicine year next year. So from that standpoint, I totally get it. I just, I can understand that, while also I'm not going to pretend like it's better than what it is. Thanks for watching this clip from Bill's Chat. For the full episode, you can find the link in the description. While you're here, we would love it if you took the time to like and subscribe. That way you'll never miss when we upload new content to Bill's Chat on YouTube.